I will begin with what I am, so that what I tell you makes sense. I am Brother Cashin of the Ultramarines, 4th Company, 1st Tactical Squad. I am 312 years old. I have fought in 41 campaigns across 6 sectors. I have killed more enemies of the Imperium than I can calculate, because I stopped counting at 10,000 and that was 240 years ago. I do not tell you this to impress you. I tell you because you need to understand the scale of what the Adeptus Astartes builds when it makes a Space Marine. They did not simply train me, they rebuilt me from the cellular level upward. They removed my fear response and replaced it with tactical assessment. They enhanced my body until it operates at parameters no augmented human can sustain. They filled my mind with 2,000 years of accumulated military doctrine and the gene memory of my Primarch, and they told me I was among the finest instruments the Emperor had ever forged. They were not wrong. That is the problem. When the instrument becomes aware of itself, when it looks at what it was built to do and asks whether the building was entirely without cost, the chapter does not have a protocol for that. I have looked. The Codex Astartes does not contain a chapter on what to do when a Space Marine decides he is tired. The 1st century was what they promised. I want to be honest about that. The first 100 years were everything the recruitment sermons described: purpose absolute and bright, the clarity of a weapon perfectly matched to its function. I fought. I won. I watched brothers fall and I grieved them in the sanctioned way, their names added to the rolls, their gene seed harvested, their sacrifice catalogued as honorable. I believed in it completely. The Emperor's light was not a metaphor to me in those years. It was a physical reality I could feel in my bones during combat. A warmth that rose with the battle cry and sustained me through things that would have destroyed an unaugmented mind. Brother Hector, who died at the siege of Raneth in my 42nd year of service, once said to me that he thought the Emperor had made us incapable of doubt on purpose, not as a flaw, as a mercy, because a weapon that can fully comprehend what it is used for might refuse to be used. I thought he was wrong then. I think he was more right than he knew. I think the mercy ran out somewhere around year 150. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way a light dims rather than extinguishes. The certainty began to cost more than it returned. By my 2nd century I had begun to notice something the chapter does not discuss openly. The older a Space Marine becomes, the more carefully he manages his inner life. Not because he is weaker, because he has accumulated more. Every campaign adds weight. Every brother lost adds weight. Every world saved and every world that could not be saved, all of it accumulates. And the architecture of certainty that sustained the first 100 years begins to require maintenance. I watched the veterans of my chapter and I understood, finally, what distinguished them from the younger brothers. It was not simply skill or experience. It was the specific discipline of a man who has learned to carry great weight without letting it show in his stride. I developed that discipline. I became good at it, too good perhaps. Because the discipline of not showing the weight eventually becomes indistinguishable from not feeling it. And I needed to feel it. I needed someone to tell me that the weight was real, that it was appropriate, that 300 years of war had produced something in me that deserved to be acknowledged rather than catalogued and filed and set aside in the name of continued operational effectiveness. No one told me that. The chapter does not have language for it. I had to find the language myself, and the finding of it nearly destroyed me. Tarnisfor was not the worst campaign I have fought. By the metrics the chapter uses, it was not even in the top 10. Moderate casualties, strategic objective achieved, world reclaimed, chaos influence purged, a successful operation. What Tarnis IV was, what distinguished it from the 40 campaigns before it, was that I could not make the accounting work afterward. I stood in the rubble of the capital hive and I tried to do what I had done 40 times before. Arrange the costs against the benefits, confirm that the outcome justified the process, follow the losses under necessary, and move forward. I could not do it, not because the numbers were wrong, because I had finally noticed that the process of accounting itself was a kind of violence against the reality of what had happened. The dead do not become necessary by being counted. The ruined city does not become worthwhile by being logged as reclaimed. Something in me stopped being willing to perform the accounting. I reported the campaign as successful because it was. I submitted my after-action assessment with full accuracy. And then I went to the chaplain and I said, "Brother Chaplain, I need to speak with you about something that is not covered in the codex." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Brother Cashin, how long has it been since you slept without dreaming of the dead?" I asked for the death oath 14 months after Tarnus 4. I want to be precise about the timeline because I want you to understand that it was not an impulsive request. I spent 14 months attempting every sanctioned remedy the chapter offered. I completed the rites of purification. I underwent the mental conditioning protocols administered by the librarium. I spoke extensively with the chaplaincy. I trained harder. I served on 3 additional campaigns. None of it resolved what Tarnus IV had begun. The accounting would not close. The weight would not redistribute. I was functional, completely, reliably, unimpeachably functional. I never failed in my duties. I never hesitated in combat. I never gave my brothers any reason to question my effectiveness, but I was tired in a way that sleep does not touch, and I had become certain that the only resolution available to me was the one the chapter reserves for brothers who have reached the end of their service. The Death Oath, a final campaign, chosen by the brother, fought without expectation of survival. An honorable end. I went to Captain Dantius and I laid out my case. He listened to everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "No." He did not say no because he doubted my sincerity. He did not say no because he thought I was malfunctioning or compromised. He said no because he said, "Brother Cashin, I have watched you for 170 years. I know what you are. You are not a Marine who has reached the end of his capability. You are a Marine who has reached the end of a particular way of understanding his capability. Those are not the same thing." I told him they felt the same from the inside. He said, "I know. That is precisely why I am refusing. Because what you are asking for is a resolution, and what you actually need is a reckoning. The Death Oath closes the question. I am telling you the question needs to stay open." I did not understand him then. I was angry in the controlled, precise way that Space Marines are angry. No raised voice, no visible disturbance, just a very clean and total disagreement. I told him I respected his decision and I withdrew. In the corridor outside his chamber I stood for approximately 40 seconds doing nothing. Which is, for a Space Marine, an extraordinarily long time to do nothing. He had named something I had not been able to name. I did not know yet whether the naming would help. I knew it had changed something. The question, as he had called it, had shifted slightly in its orientation, still heavy, but differently shaped. Brother Aldrich has been in his dreadnought shell for 900 years. He fought beside Robert Guilliman himself. In the era before the plague we was quiet for a long time, which, in a dreadnought, sounds like the deep subsonic hum of ancient systems processing. Then he said, "Brother, I asked for the same thing. In my 400th year, I asked to be allowed to die rather than be interred in this shell. They refused me too. I asked him if he had ever resolved it, the weight, the accounting that would not close. He said, no. I asked him how he had continued. He said, I decided that my inability to resolve it was the most honest thing about me. That the weight was not a malfunction, it was appropriate. It was what 300 years of war should feel like if you have been paying attention. And I decided that I would rather be the Marine who felt the weight accurately than the one who had learned to feel nothing at all. That was the first thing anyone had said to me in 14 months that I could not immediately argue with. Wars before the Primarch's return changed everything. He is not used often in active campaigns now. His tactical doctrine is calibrated to a galaxy that has shifted considerably in 9 centuries, but he is consulted, and he chooses, occasionally, to speak. I went to him because I did not know who else to ask. I told him what I had told the captain. I want to be honest about what changed and what did not. What changed? I stopped seeking a resolution. I stopped trying to make the accounting close. I accepted, as Brother Aldrich had accepted, that the weight is the weight and it does not diminish and it is not supposed to diminish, and the goal is not to put it down, but to learn the specific posture that allows you to carry it without it destroying your ability to function. What did not change? The weight. I still dream of the dead. I still stand in the aftermath of victories and feel the specific hollowness that 42 campaigns have produced. I still sometimes look at my hands, these enhanced, rebuilt, in human hands, and think about all the things they have done and cannot undo. None of that resolved. What resolved was my relationship to the resolution. I stopped fighting it. Fighting it was exhausting me more than carrying it. The Space Marine who asked for the Death Oath was fighting the weight. The Space Marine I am now carries it. The difference is not peace. The difference is sustainability. I can do this for another 300 years if the Emperor requires it. I no longer believe that requiring it of me is without cost. But I have stopped believing that the cost makes it wrong. 3 months after my conversation with Brother Aldrich, I was deployed to Viridian Crossing. Tyranid incursion, high fleet splinter, moderate scale, standard interdiction parameters. I fought it the same way I have fought 42 other campaigns. But something was different in my internal experience of it that I will attempt to describe accurately. I fought without the specific background calculation I had been running for 150 years, the constant low-level comparison of costs to benefits, the unending accounting that I had finally admitted could not be closed. In its place was something simpler, not joy. I am not certain Space Marines experience joy in the way that baseline humans do, but something adjacent to it, a quality of presence. I was not fighting to justify the fighting. I was not fighting to confirm that the last 3 centuries had been worth it. I was fighting because the enemy was there and the people behind me could not fight it themselves, and that was sufficient reason. Just that, just the sufficient reason, without the overlay of everything I needed it to also prove. It was the cleanest engagement I had fought in 100 years. Brother Hector would have called it grace. I think he would have been right. Captain Dantius asked me, 6 months after Viridian Crossing, whether I had reconsidered my assessment of his refusal. I told him I had. He asked what my current assessment was. I told him, you were right. Not because you gave me what I needed. Because you refused to give me what I wanted, which is a different and more difficult form of service. He nodded. He said, Brother Cashin, in 170 years of watching you, the thing I have most trusted about you is that you do not stop thinking. Most Marines learn to manage their thinking, to root it in productive directions and seal off the rest. You never learned to seal anything off. I told him I was not certain that was a virtue. He said, it is not a virtue, it is a fact about you. What you do with it determines whether it becomes one. I carry that now alongside everything else. The weight of 312 years. The question that does not close. The accounting that will never balance. And underneath all of it, something Brother Aldrich gave me, the knowledge that feeling the weight accurately is not weakness. It is what paying attention costs. I am Brother Cashin of the Ultramarines. I asked to die. I was refused. I am grateful. It took me 14 months to understand why. It will probably take me another 300 years to understand it fully. I have the time. The Emperor, it seems, is not finished with me yet. Brother Cashin asked to die. He was refused. He found, eventually, that the refusal was the answer. If that story stayed with you, if something in the weight of 300 years felt familiar, then you know what kind of listener you are. Subscribe, because the next confession is already waiting. And if you want to decide whose story comes next, the comment section is open. The chapter keeps records of everything, including votes.